Hi guys, welcome back to another video. I'm really tired right now. I hope you really, we stayed up late last night making our last video, right John?
Yeah.
We just finished filming.
Yeah.
It might be posted today, next week, I don't know. Really don't know.
And it might look dark like now, like over there, but it's actually day.
Just that we didn't do tinters, so whatever.
I don't know why that
Looks nice, yeah.
we're doing this.
Daytime. It's just that our light is off and stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's just like really early in the morning.
I really want to go to sleep.
Me too. What are you talking about? Stop it. Okay? Joyce. So today we're going to be watching I've Been in a Coma for Years and I Could Hear Everything, part 1, I think. I don't know.
So we just watch the video.
So let's get right to it.
And I'm going to be watching on Candy's computer.
Yeah.
My computer works, but I'm just watching on it.
Hi there, I'm Aria. Imagine
Hi, Aria.
yourself not being able to say, I'm hungry, I'm hurting, thank you, I love you. Imagine yourself being imprisoned inside a body which doesn't obey your orders at all. People are all around you,
Oh, that's
yet
sad.
you feel alone. It wouldn't be easy, would it? Well, I lived for years feeling this way. Years of wishing for the ability to connect, to express, to share with others. Maybe you're wondering about the reason? Well, it was that I fell off the tree. I was my mom and dad's only child. We were a middle-class family, and we lived in a small house with a stunning backyard, which had an old oak tree that was said to be even older than my grandparents. When my dad first bought the house, he found a tree house in the oak tree built by the kids who had lived in the house before us. After a lot of convincing, my father agreed to fix the tree house. He even made a wooden ladder so I could climb into the tree easily. I remember helping my dad decorate its walls with posters and photos of my favorite band. For a second, you might be thinking, what a sweet family. But no, this wasn't the case exactly. You see, my mom was a moody woman who yelled a lot, and nothing me or my dad did could please her. She would spend the whole night smoking cigarettes in front of the TV and then sleep the whole day. As for my dad, he spent his time working so he could pay the bills and buy us food. And me, well, after I got home from school, there was nothing for me to do but go and play with my dolls in the treehouse. For my 13th birthday, my dad bought me the best gift ever. He bought me a little white puppy that was super fluffy.
That is the best gift.
Perhaps this dog would keep me company so I wouldn't be so alone. I loved Snowball, and I taught him lots of tricks. We used to spend all day together in the treehouse. We would only go home to eat dinner. That way, we steered clear of my mom's yelling and her long fights with my dad. I watched the sky a lot during my days in the treehouse. Back then, my dad only came home after the sun had set, so I'd watch the stars lighting up the sky. They looked amazing. I knew that those stars were nothing but meteors traveling fast through the sky as they burned, but everything my dad told me about them made them seem magical. One time, I was watching the sky with Snowball, waiting for my dad to return home. When he arrived, he climbed up and sat beside me. He said, "This falling star is a wish that just came true for someone out there in the world." "A wish?" I said. He explained a long time ago there was a poor man praying to the gods every day. However, the gods were always busy, so they didn't answer him. One day, he screamed so loudly the mountains shook. The gods looked at him and listened to his troubles. They became so sad and cried burning stars. So this way, whenever he saw a falling star in the sky, he'd make a wish and the gods would make them come true. "But can this be possible?" I asked. And he replied, "Legends are a beautiful thing to hear, but not to believe." "If the legends are so old, how can we know if they are true or not?" I asked. He just smiled at me and said it was time to head back into the house. On that same night, while I was lying in bed hugging Snowball, it started to feel like my life was falling apart. My mom was screaming hysterically at my dad, telling him that the money he was bringing in was no longer enough and that he should start searching for an extra job. She said that
You
she
should
could no
work
longer go
later.
out with her friends because she was so embarrassed. She couldn't afford to buy new dresses every time they went out like her friends did. I saw Snowball looking at me as if he wanted to say, "What a silly woman." The fighting and loud screaming continued for a long time until I could no longer bear it. I snuck out of the window and headed towards the dark oak tree in the backyard. Everything around me was dark. Behind me walked Snowball. We crept very quietly so no one would hear us, and then we arrived at the treehouse. It was pitch black, so I missed a step on the ladder, and then my leg slipped. The last thing I remembered from that day was that after I fell hard on the ground, everything around me turned fuzzy. Snowball sounded far away, even though I could see him jumping around me. Then I wasn't able to feel anything. After a little while, I felt myself waking up. My head hurt and I couldn't feel any part of my body. I'd completely lost control over my body parts. Even my eyes, I couldn't open them. I could feel the light around me, but it was too difficult to open my eyes. Oh my, what happened to me? Was I stuck in my sleep? Or was it worse than that? Had I died? I didn't know much about death, except that after death, a person drowns in darkness. But this darkness I felt was different, completely different. I could feel my body
She looks like a
freezing.
zombie.
Suddenly I heard someone. If I was able to hear him, that means I wasn't dead.
Okay. You're not dead,
From
okay?
his tone of voice, I
Yeah.
gathered he was a doctor speaking to
Did
my
you for-
parents.
did
He
you
said,
forget
the
this
damage
when
she
we were
suffered
doing
to
the
her
video?
head due to the fall
No.
has resulted in severe
This video
internal
is-
bleeding in her brain, which is
This
preventing
video
enough
is so
oxygen
sad.
from reaching her body, resulting in a coma. But I wasn't in a coma. I was there with them. I heard my dad crying and my mom inquiring about the treatment fees. I wanted to scream, to call out for them, to say something, anything. But I wasn't able to even talk at that time. Suddenly, I was just a vegetable, unable to do anything but listen.
Wait,
Most
wait.
people don't think twice before talking or connecting with others.
What?
They do it automatically. But I had
Did you see her? She was a broccoli. She's a vegetable. Look, go back. Wait. Why did they show her as a vegetable? Wait.
there with them. I heard my dad crying and my mom inquiring
Wait.
about the treatment fees.
Watch her.
I wanted to scream, to call out for them, to say something, anything. But I wasn't able to even talk at that time. Suddenly, I was just a vegetable.
Look at that. Look at that. She's a little vegetable. Is she a vegetable? Is she a vegetable? Is that what she thinks she is right now? Yeah. I think she
Not
is.
able to do anything but listen. Most people don't think twice before talking or connecting with others. They do it automatically. But I had absolutely no way of speaking to anyone.
This can be
For the
out.
last 13 years.
Okay, ads are stupid. I don't like.
Absolutely no way of speaking to anyone. For the last 13 years, I had been a normal girl. A girl who loved her dad, her dog, and who loved to play. I was happy.
She
and
didn't.
healthy,
Wait,
but now
she didn't say nothing about loving her mom. That is perfect. Her mom is a literal witch. God.
My dream when I
Don't even talk.
grandma was a witch and they tried to kill her.
You can't even talk like that. Okay, so let's get back to the video.
that had all changed. The doctors didn't know what to do. They thought I was completely in a coma, but they always treated me nicely. All the time I spent in the hospital, I only heard my dad's voice. My mom had completely vanished.
You
I didn't
can't
know where
do
she
that to your
was,
only
and I
daughter.
couldn't hear anything related to her.
The child
Until the
for
day
that
the
fact.
doctor said there is nothing more they can do and that it is best for me to return to my parents' home. I heard my mom arguing with my dad. She didn't want me back home. I was, according to her, a burden that she didn't want to carry. But I went home
You
anyway.
don't have to carry her.
I was happy because I was returning home. I heard my dad telling my mom that he finished the treehouse because that was the last thing I asked him to do. That's why he insisted on bringing me back home, so I could be near the things I loved. However, things went downhill from there. I lost my ability to move. I failed all the mind exams they conducted on me in the hospital. So the doctors told my parents they could treat me as if I didn't exist. My return home was just a hopeless attempt at keeping my unconscious body comfortable until I died. My dad tried his hardest to keep me comfortable, and that really annoyed my mom. Their friends stopped visiting after a while, and the money dad was providing was no longer enough. Machines that were keeping me alive were too expensive. Before, I was able to escape my mom screaming and ranting. But today, I
No,
was
she can't
stuck with
escape
it
that
without them even
stupidness.
knowing that I could hear them. The whole thing felt like a nightmare. When my dad first got me Snowball, I thought that he was very smart and could just understand me without even having to talk to him. But my dad used to laugh and say, dogs are about as smart as a 3-year-old.
Yeah, right.
When you're happy, sad,
Dogs
or
are
scared,
strong,
they
are
can't
the
read your
strong,
mind.
the
Deep
smartest
down, though,
animals
I
in the
knew
world.
Snowball was no ordinary
Yeah.
dog. He was special enough to be able to read my thoughts because we had this insane bond. Every time my parents started their screaming matches, I'd hear Snowball sitting beside me and barking in a low voice, as if to tell me that
Okay.
everything would be all right. I was sure that
Dogs
Snowball
are
knew
better
I
than
was a
cats.
prisoner in my
If you
body,
have
unlike what
cats,
everyone else believed.
You
He
might not want
never
to
left
sell it,
my
but you
side,
should
and
because
breathing
it's
was
a
my
cat.
only comfort.
Don't even
For a
talk
while,
about
I
it.
used to
Stop
be
it.
entertained by my
It's not
father when
annoying.
he entered my room
Sorry
at
if
night
you
and
have
started
a cat.
moving
I
my
love
body
cats
left
too.
and right to help my blood
Yeah, but
circulate.
my mom
Once he
is
was done,
just-
he'd sit beside
my
me and
grandma
talk with
just-
me for an hour or so.
I love
Just
cats,
dance
yeah.
like he used to before. But that didn't last for long. The last talk he had with me was about how tired he was, both physically and mentally. That he was very upset he'd lost his little girl, the only person in the whole world who used to listen to him. That day, I heard him sobbing so loudly.
Oh,
Then he
my God.
suddenly said, I can no longer bear to look at you like this anymore. After that, he stopped talking to me altogether. A year quickly turned into 2, and I felt the person I used to be disappearing. Not just her body, but also her memories. My mom said that she'd had enough with my stuff taking up so much room, and that she could put the space to good use. My dad wasn't able to refuse, so he just said that he'd moved my things to the treehouse. It wasn't long until I was moved out of my room to another one that was more practical and way smaller. It had barely enough room for my bed, machines, and for one person to be able to move around in. That was enough for me, according to my mom. What was worse was that
I
this
hate her
little
mom.
room was next to the living room.
Her
That
dad
meant
should
that I
get a
could hear
number one
everything.
dad
I mean,
award.
literally down to the tiniest details. 2 years turned to
Literally.
3, and I was still in the
Already?
same place with no one aware of my existence. It was like I was a ghost. Whenever my mom's friends came to visit, they used to ignore me, as if I was just part of the furniture. I was dead to everyone, just not in the ground. Only Snowball remained at my side. My mom and her friends' conversations were ridiculous. They gossiped a lot and couldn't stop judging their relatives. Sometimes they talked about clothes, travel, and their husbands. I once heard my mom talking ill about my dad. She said he was the reason behind her unhappiness, and that she had met some rich guy at a coffee shop. That guy had invited her for a drink, and she'd gone to meet him. And now she was seriously considering leaving me and my dad. For me, that was the worst part about those 3 years. Feeling totally powerless and not being able to stand in front of her and not being able to scream, "You're an ungrateful woman. All the things dad did for you, and yet it's never enough. Now you want to leave him because some other guy has more money?" My poor dad didn't deserve my mom, or even me. I found myself in utter darkness, and the darkness was swallowing my dad up whole. I couldn't remember much about my life before the fall. I was so terrified I'd forget everything. I remembered having a friend called Maisie, but I couldn't remember what we used to do or how we would spend time together. I remember loving science, but I no longer remembered any of the stuff that we'd learned at school. At the same time,
Okay, that's
my
cool.
mind clung onto those memories, and at the same time, started creating new ones that hadn't existed before. I had to find a way to
She made
escape
a
from this
memory that she
world,
went to
even
cry.
if I had to create my own world inside
Type of
my
music.
head. Maisie became my best friend. She always visited on Sundays.
Okay, we're gonna watch part 2.
Yeah. They're gonna watch every part today, I think.
Yeah, this is the last part.
How many seconds is it? Okay, this side.
Yes. Ah, bro. Take him so he doesn't scream his lungs out. I'm not taking anything. previously.
It was pitch black, so I missed a step on the ladder, and then my leg slipped. The damage she suffered to her head due to the fall has resulted in severe internal bleeding in her brain, resulting in a coma. But I wasn't in a
Wait,
coma.
didn't her mom
That
make
meant that
her
I
in the
could hear
world?
everything. A year
I
quickly
think
turned
so.
into 2,
Okay,
and I
go.
felt the person I used to be disappearing. I had to find a way to stay here, in this world.
Okay.
I remember loving science, but I no longer remembered any of the stuff that we'd
Okay, wait,
learned at
do we left
school.
off?
At the same time, my mind clung onto those memories, and at the same time, started creating new ones that hadn't existed before. I had to find a way to stay here, in this world. Even if I had to create my own world inside my head. Maisie became my best friend. She always visited on Sundays. Every time she came, she talked about our classmates. How Sophie had fallen in love with Joe, and how Kit had failed the math test, so the teacher had punished him by making him solve 10 equations in front of the whole class. Maisie's visits, though they were only in my head, were the best parts of my day. I didn't know that what I was doing in order to entertain myself was actually a kind of exercise for my damaged mind. I didn't realize that I was helping myself get better. If I'd known, I wouldn't have waited 3 years to start doing it. My consciousness was slowly returning. You might wonder, how did I realize that? Well, simply, I felt my eyelids flutter whenever Maisie visited me. Believe it or not, our thoughts have incredible power. But even so, no one knew that I was coming out of a coma. Ever since I'd first been diagnosed as being in a coma, I was totally aware of everything happening around me, exactly like a normal person. But I was stuck inside a silent body, it seemed, a mind full of life that no one noticed. I started accepting this cruel fate and got lost in my made-up thoughts. Suddenly, I could no longer tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. There's a fine line that separates memory from imagination, and I'd clearly overstepped it. But the one thing I was absolutely certain of was that the fights my parents had and my mom's betrayal were 100% real. After 4 years, my mom had had enough of me. How long must I endure moving this body left and right without any response? She would yell in my dad's face, and he would answer, until she dies. Imagine being in my position, not being able to speak to a friend, not feeling loved anymore, not having any ambitions or dreams, no hope of being able to look forward to anything. All my thoughts were miserable ones. I lived in fear, and if I was being honest, I was waiting for death so I could escape from all of this. I pictured myself dying in some nursing home, cold and alone. And so that's how I spent those 4 long years. Snowball's existence was my only comfort.
R.I.P.
My eyelids
I don't know
started
what it
fluttering
stands
a
for,
lot.
but
You might think that's not really a big deal. Anyone can do that without trying, but that wasn't the case with me. Snowball noticed what was going on and started to bark for hours and hours without stopping. My mom couldn't tolerate it. My dad came home and Snowball continued to bark. Everyone went to bed and Snowball was still barking. He was just like me, wishing for someone to realize that I was still with them. But what happened was the opposite of what we hoped for. The next day, his barking stopped completely. I didn't know what had happened to him. Mom must have gotten rid of him. I was really worried
Better
about
not.
him. Snowball was my only friend, the only one that
He
made me
better
feel
not,
that
that's
I
where
wasn't
just
actually
killing
dead.
that
He
mom.
disappeared. That day, I heard some heated discussion between my parents. You might say that nothing was new, but this time it was different. My mom decided to leave my dad. She accused him of having never been the perfect husband. She was crazy. He was the coolest dad a girl could ever
Yes,
wish for.
that
I
is-
tried to persuade her to
yeah,
stay, but it was
that's what I'm
pointless.
the one.
She screamed at the top of her voice. It would have been better if she died that day. It's like a curse that won't go away unless I leave. The sound of the door slamming was the last thing I heard that day. I was incapable of changing any of the things around me or even the way my mom and dad looked at me. I was an invisible silent watcher to how people acted when they thought no one was looking. Unfortunately, I wasn't just a watcher. Because of my inability to communicate with people, I became the perfect victim. A creature that looked like it was devoid of emotions. For 4 years, my mom used to abuse me mentally and physically. What did I ever do to
That
her
looks
to
like a
deserve
monster.
that? Part of me wanted to cry, and the other part wanted to fight. I was
Because
so
my mom
full of
is a
pain
monster.
and sadness. It was torture. The following day, it was like I no longer existed inside the house. My dad was really depressed. He moved me to a nursing home, exactly like I'd expected would happen. I felt worthless now without Snowball, and without people around me. I became even more of a shell of my former self. Another year went by, and everyone still thought I was in a deep coma. In the nursing house, everything was so quiet. No voices, no movements, and no talking. Just a stranger who moved me left and right every day and who made sure that my machines were working normally. The 6-year mark came and went, and then the 7th, and everything was the same. I used to figure out that the time from the nurses changing shifts every 6 hours. That meant that on the 4th time I was moved, a day would have passed. No one visited me during the 3 years that I spent there except my friend Maisie. No one cared about me but her. I lived in terror. I knew every day would be exactly the same as the last one, over and over again. I totally lost any hope I had of hearing
Wait,
another
didn't she
person's
not?
voice.
Does she
But
not
then one
eat?
night, my dad decided to
No?
visit me. I had
Wow.
no idea what date it was because I'd lost all sense of time. But it happened to be my 20th birthday. He held my hand, and I couldn't believe it when I heard his voice. It felt like a dream. He told me, "You won't be alone anymore. I'll be with you forever from now on. I can't believe you just turned 20. Emotions welled up in me, and suddenly I could feel the familiar fluttering of my eyelids. I had to open my eyes. I couldn't stay like this anymore. My dad had his face buried in my shoulder and he was crying. He couldn't see my face or my eyes, but when he turned his head, he jumped and
Oh,
ran
she
outside
looks
screaming
creepy
at the
right
top of his voice, "Doctor, I need a doctor!" Perhaps emotions have more power than we realize.
Yep.
My dad's love for
Love
me made
con-
me open my eyes once again. The
Love
doctors ran some
conquers
tests
all
on me, and none
people.
of them could explain what had happened. They only said the damage that her head suffered was apparently able to heal with time. Your daughter is out of her coma. To make sure I was able to hear them, the doctor asked me to blink twice, and I did it. Being able to communicate again, even in a simple way, felt like the best thing in the
Hold on,
world.
I need to
But even
pause
more
this.
than
I'll
that
be
was the
right
fact that I was no longer.
A very funny story.
Turn on.
It is. So the reason we just did that is because my parents wanted us to go to bed, but we begged them. They gave us 5 minutes so we could finish this video and stop the video and post it. Maybe I don't know. What do they do?
Longer a nobody. Dad was so excited. He didn't even know where to begin. But my movement and reactions were still limited. It would take time. There were seriously times where I almost gave up, but I had to hold on to this. My dad promised never to leave me alone, and he kept his word. At night, my dad moved my bed towards the window. It was the first time I'd seen the sky for the last 7 years. At that moment, a star fell from the sky. I closed my eyes and wished to be able to speak again. I mean, there must have been a reason for the star to.
Sick of red, itchy
Why
mosquito
does
bites?
this ad?
This gene
Here we go.
Star to fall at that moment, right? It couldn't have been a coincidence. That night, my dad told me about that dark day. He told me how Snowball ran home barking nonstop. My mom tried to shut him up and to kick him out, but he refused. He bit my dad's pants and kept pushing until my dad came with him outside. From afar, he saw me motionless on the ground. He panicked and drove me to the hospital in a hurry. There, they told him that there was no hope, but my dad wouldn't give up.
Turn it.
My mom tried to shut him up and to kick him out, but he refused. He bit my dad's pants and kept pushing until my dad came with him outside. From afar, he saw me motionless on the ground. He panicked and drove me to the hospital in a hurry. There, they told him that there was no hope, but my dad wouldn't give up. He knew there would come a day where I'd be okay again. He must have gotten sick of waiting for that day. It's true that I was happy for recovering gradually, but even then, I didn't feel completely free. People around me were still controlling everything. When and what I ate, if I could stay in bed, or if I should be sitting on a chair. It didn't matter how many times I blinked. I couldn't say anything except for yes and no. One day, my dad came in all happy. He told me that the doctors had finally agreed to let him take me on a wheelchair around the city. It was the first time in so long that I get to move and finally leave my bed. I was scared. The outside world must have changed a lot. I didn't know if I should go, but I needed this. It was time to get back out there. I remember one moment from that day very vividly. My dad left me alone in the car on our way back in order to buy something quickly from the store. A woman passed by, looked at me, and smiled. I didn't know the reason behind her smile back then, and I'll never know. But that small smile, a small human interaction, made me feel better again. That woman's smile is what pushed me to continue. Seeing my dad come into my room was always the best moment of my day. However, I wasn't pleased when my dad entered my room with the press who came to listen to my story. Apparently, they decided that my story was worth being told and shared. The press ruined my peace and quiet. My mom even returned just so she could be in the spotlight. She returned after disappearing for so long, just for fame. The press did help a bit, though. My dad had them help us look for solutions and treatments that might help me get better. My mom, though, well, she didn't exactly show up because she suddenly remembered the importance of family. She was just there for fame, and Dad wanted me to decide if she could stay or not. Mom's answer was, "My dear daughter, do you want your mommy back in your life?" I blinked nonstop, and this meant I wanted her to go, because I knew she didn't care if I lived or died. My dad was a person who'd taken care of me my whole life. Of course, he had weak moments where he wasn't by my side, but at least he still loved me enough and thought of me all the time. And
That
for me,
guy's
that
old.
was enough. And guess what? My dad got in contact with one of the big companies that made medical devices. They had created a device that gets implanted inside the brain and is connected to a special computer. The device sends electric waves to the computer that then says the words out loud. That company heard about my condition in the media and were happy to help me. The first time they tried this on me, it was pretty funny. Everything I said made everyone laugh, but for me, it was sad because I never got an answer to my question. What I asked was, what happened to my dog Snowball? My story might be sad. Some of you might believe it, and others will say that it is just a product of my imagination. But what can't be denied is that there are a lot of people like me in this world who no one knows anything about because they don't have the ability to connect with people. It wouldn't hurt to act nicely towards them and not to ignore them, because, like me, they have feelings too. My suffering lasted for 7 years, but I truly believe that the star that fell that night was the reason my wish of being able to talk again came true. Everything happens for a reason. Did you like my story? Don't forget to tell me what you think in the comments below, and to like and subscribe to the channel.
Okay, guys, that was our video today. Let me stop this. So that was our video today.
That was very sad.
So we'll be posting that. We post every Saturday, Monday, sometimes Tuesdays and Wednesdays, maybe Thursdays. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing yet. Since we just make videos, I don't know. But tomorrow we're gonna be playing Strong Man Simulator.
Yeah.
Johnny might be a little bit higher already, and I might be like a little bit higher. But we're gonna be playing, and we're gonna be getting a little bit bigger.
And
And
after
rebirth.
Yeah, then yeah, we'll end the video there. All of us, we're both gonna be we're not gonna end.
And we might make a part 2 of it. I don't know what I'm gonna be doing yet.
And then we could make a video with Booga Booga.
Booga. Booga. That's a really fun game. We
We
might
haven't-
play Adopt Me, Lifetopia,
We haven't.
Carnival Tycoon.
No, I don't want to play Carnival Tycoon. I played that game before and I've already downloaded Carnival.
Well, whatever. My video without you. I might play Model Tycoon. We don't know.
Yeah.
But yes, have a good night, morning, afternoon, whatever you are right now.
By the way, this took the whole entire day.
Almost
Yeah.
10 a.m. We start at like,
In the morning?
yeah, we start at like,
5 a.m.
no, we don't wake up, well, we wake up at like 6, so like here, it's like kind of still dark. But, good night, good morning,
I don't know what to say.
good afternoon. So goodbye, hope you had an amazing day, amazing night, amazing afternoon,
And
amazing
please
morning.
do not get a dream about
Do not have a dream. And do not sneak out and go fall off your treehouse in the backyard and fall off and have a coma.
this. Yeah.
For 7 years. 8 years. I don't know how long.
Like 20 years.
Anyways, we're gonna end this video right here. Make sure to join us in the next video. Like,
Just by the way, do not even get a treehouse, actually.
Treehouse are
Evil.
good night. If you're living in any house, like either low, very low to the ground or on the ground. I don't know. But good night. See you guys later in my next video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.